What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're joined by fellow YouTuber and longtime channel supporter of mine, Dave, who's going to be talking to us about his experience breaking into the world of software engineering, iOS in this case. And we're going to drill into whether or not boot camps are worth it, any firsthand, tips and tricks that he can share with us, the gotchas along the way, so on and so forth. So before we dive into all of that, drop a like down below, hit subscribe for more tech content, and Dave, take it away. Let us and everyone know your story, who you are, and why you're here today.
Well, yeah, Faraz, so great to be here. I've watched so many hours of your content of kind of you talking at me. So it's really cool to, have some dialogue today. So yeah, thanks for having me. Like you said, I'm an iOS developer, currently working at CVS Health, and that was kind of my first real kind of official developer role after a career change of mine. And so, yeah, kind of just give an overview of what got me here today. Back maybe about 2 years ago at this point, I was working in the tech space, but more on the business development side of things at a startup. And was just unsure if that was the field that I wanted to stay in long term. And so for me, I just started considering other career paths, and software development was one that seemed cool. I had an interest in it for a long time, but just never really took any action on learning it. And so, yeah, just started to spend my free time on nights and weekends poking around, and really loved iOS at the time, as a longtime Apple user of a lot of their products, and Swift was just a really approachable language. And so kind of just started to run with that, to the point of enjoying it so much that I decided to leave the role that I had and jump into a boot camp, after a long period of consideration of, if that was going to be the right call for me. But yeah, had a really great experience, came out of that with a great foundation of iOS development that I then continued to build on. And it took me about 6 months after that of, getting multiple apps on the App Store, refining maybe some gaps that I had in my kind of basics of iOS development. And then also did an internship, which ultimately, again, led to my first role as an iOS developer at CVS Health, which is where I'm at today. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but it's been totally worth it. And just to kind of be in a good field that I'm, stimulated, through my workday and through the work, it made it all worth it. So yeah, excited to kind of drill down into some more of those things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, it sounds like it's been a busy 2 years for you, crazy to say the least, but
Yeah.
hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you mentioned you took the plunge from business development into software. Could you share, or I'm curious rather, is there any particular reason that you wanted to go down like the SWE path? Any thoughts on if you wanted to be like a product manager or a
Yeah.
designer, or like why software engineering? And then I guess to build on that, why iOS? Why not Android or something else?
Yeah, sure. So, given that I was working at a software company, it was, a startup at that point. So there were about 20-ish people. But I got a ton of exposure to all the different kind of roles in a software company, at a company that was really scaling their user base. So I was working very closely with like a product manager, with the UX designers, but also working pretty closely with the engineers on different implementations and things like that. And so kind of just like out of the roles that are available within tech, for me, software development was the one that I wanted to start investigating a little bit more. I think I had the perception that these people are just brilliant geniuses, and, regular people aren't able to kind of do what they do. And thankfully I was wrong. I don't, consider myself to be like a genius, but it's good, because then anybody that's willing to work hard and dedicate the time can become a software developer. And I think that's, a really cool thing about the career.
So you mentioned a couple of things where you kind of had this exploration phase. There was a bit of familiarity. I know iOS is tangible to a degree where you can run it on your phone, and we all use like apps on the daily, a variety of them. So I think that totally makes sense. So, okay, so you're at the point where you have figured out this is the thing that you want to at least begin exploring.
Mhm.
Where do we get to the point where you say, okay, I need a boot camp, this is what's right for me? Take us from the time where you
Yeah.
decided I'm going to look into this to this time you picked, well, maybe a boot camp is right for me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, it was really just one step at a time. And so when I first started getting into it, there was no rush to kind of get out of the job that I was in. It was stable. It was a decent job. So it put me in a good position because I had all the time, and I guess I could really be selective and hopefully intelligent about what I was going to pursue next. So yeah, I guess step one was just like try and learn some of the basics and see if there's an interest there. And then the way I thought about it was whatever the outcome of that is, I'm better off. Either I try it and I figure out I hate it. Well, now I can mark that off my list and, maybe look into UX design or whatever comes up next. Or if I'm really enjoying it, then I can, take more steps, start to connect with people in the industry, learn more about, okay, I really enjoy this. What does it look like to now turn this into a career and land a job in it? So before I, considered any of those things, it was literally just poking around, trying to get a feel for Xcode and things like that. But yeah, it really progressed for me to where I wanted to now, learn more. Okay, how do I break into this? Talk to people in the industry, get their take, learn from their experiences. And I was, lucky to have some people that I could connect with to kind of get some guidance there. And so it over, the course of that process, it became pretty apparent to me that, man, there's so much to learn to have like a decent grasp and like kind of get close to the point of being hireable in terms of the skills that you need. Like it's just so vast. And working a full-time job, being married, and having some other things in my life, I was only able to do, anywhere from like 6 or 7 hours a week, learning it. And so you can't get very far on on your own. So it was pretty clear to me I needed for my situation, in order to get to where I need to be skill wise and be semi, in a position where I could maybe get hired, I needed to like leave my full-time job and just go all in. And so, I had heard of people going to software developer boot camps, and things like that. And for me, it really seemed like a good environment where I could just rapidly accelerate my learnings, versus maybe going like full self-taught while having a full-time job. For me, it seemed like it was just going to be years and years of doing that. And so I think once I realized that, hey, this could be a good option for me, then it became a matter of, seeing what was available in terms of boot camps. And then also like taking an honest look, just logistically of, how can I make this work for my situation in terms of the finances, in terms of maybe, it taking several months after the boot camp of job searching, and how's that going to look? Is this going to put me in a bad spot? And so, once those kind of things were figured out, I mean, for my situation, given that I was going after iOS, there's not many iOS boot camps. So I guess it made that process a little bit easier for me compared to maybe web development or some other areas where there's 30 or 40 boot camp options.
Yeah, no, I mean, that totally makes sense. I think everyone's situation lends itself differently to whether or not a boot camp is the right choice. It also makes sense, right? The more time and effort you are able to devote, the in theory, the farther you're going to get. And if you start, if you start wearing yourself too thin with all these different things, either you're going to be exhausted and miserable, or you're going to be miserable and the quality is going to, degrade for everything across the board. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting, right? So there aren't a lot of iOS boot camps, so that probably helps in your selectivity, and the options that are available to you. So when you started to consider, there are a variety of quote unquote boot camps to learn, right? There's online courses, there's in-person boot camps, there's fully remote. You
Yeah.
know, there's ones that are more expensive, longer, shorter. How did you go about picking one? Was there a recommendation? Do you
Mhm.
have you know, you mentioned being methodical. Was there a method to the madness of picking a boot camp?
Yeah, I mean, so step one was, I had isolated iOS. It was literally just what options are there, So of course, turned to Google, found a lot on, sites that have a list of boot camps and would explore a lot of those like iOS programs, only to find out that they were no longer being run in a lot of cases. So yeah, I think I just made a list in my notes app of which ones are actually available today. And in my case, there was only one in-person program, which was Dev Mountain, and several that were like online and had different kind of time requirements in terms of some were maybe part-time, some were full-time. And just the way that, I thought about it was kind of comparing the reputability of these options, how long they'd been around, and then also what I thought I could get out of it. So for me, given that there was one in-person option, I was thinking, hey, um, that's probably the way to go if I can do that, just because I'll be like live with the instructors, I'll be live in person with the other students, and there's something about that environment that attracted me to that option. Now the decision would have been a lot tougher if there were 10 good in-person options for me, but in my situation it made that decision pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, that obviously comes with its own challenges just in terms of logistics. If you don't live in that area, how are you gonna either have housing or make that work? So I think that online programs are a really viable option as well. And I think that nowadays a lot of them would have adapted to put things in place to run those effectively, just with COVID and all that.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think if all things being equal, if you can do an in-person program, there's definitely some things that will offer that an online program won't. But I think that online courses are still gonna get you a pretty good level of that, community camaraderie, interaction with instructors and things like that too.
I think logistically, that's a big thing that people gloss over often when talking about if a boot camp is worth it. It's not particularly easy sometimes for people to move. And
Yeah.
like we're talking very, or at least maybe I'm thinking of this like very domestically, like in the States. A lot of places
Yeah.
like internationally, like across Europe and Asia, and I can't even speak to like Australia and over there. But yeah, I'm sure boot camps are in limited supply, so that's definitely a pretty big consideration. I want to drill into one thing that you mentioned there very briefly, before we get to the big question of whether or not boot camp is worth it. Is
Mhm.
you were looking for something where you can get out of the boot camp what you expected to get out. Can we
Mhm.
let's drill into what did you expect to get out? I think oftentimes people's expectations and the realities of boot camps are not very succinct by any means, and
Mhm.
I think it leads to a lot of disappointment and frankly like upset people. So what were your
Yeah.
expectations and like what did you get out of it? And honestly, what did you also not get out of it that you wish you would have?
Yeah, great questions. Again, I mentioned I had some conversations with different people in the industry, some who had gone to boot camps and things like that. And pretty much across the board, I was told by everybody, boot camps can be great, and, offer a lot of positive things, but do not have the expectation that just by signing up for this boot camp and just by even completing it, that you're gonna get a job based on just finishing it. And I think that was really good for me to hear, just that it's all it is it's a starting point, that you have to then take it upon yourself to continue learning new skills, to continue building a portfolio and doing the things that you need to do that translate to a job. And a boot camp is just one piece of that. So I was told that by many people. And I think that really helped align my expectations going into it of, hey, I'm looking to get really solid instruction, and a really firm grasp of the fundamentals of this area of software development by the time that I leave, and essentially I guess, also get the skills to continue to teach yourself. Because, you can't stay in a boot camp for 12 months. At some point you're kind of turned loose, and again, it's kind of on you. So yeah, I think my expectation was that this is going to be, a good environment where I can really apply myself. I was also told that you get out of it whatever you put into it.
Mm.
So, just by showing up, you're not going to, by osmosis receive all of this stuff. You really have to put in the work. And for me, that's something that I did not take lightly at all. Leaving a semi-stable job and spending some time away from family and things like that. I was like, if I'm coming, to Utah to do this, like, this is what I'm here to do. And I'm going to make friends and stuff like that, but I'm not here to relax and kick back. I want to get as much kind of leverage the environment, leverage the instructors and the curriculum, so that I can, take that and, carry on after. So yeah, my expectations were really just that it's going to be a good learning environment for me to gain a lot of the fundamentals, and not necessarily that it would immediately translate into, many job offers. And like you said, I think that unfortunately there's a lot of misalignment with maybe people's expectations of how easy all I have to do is just sign up. I don't have to work that hard, or it should take me no time at all to get a job. And sadly, that's what can lead to a lot of frustration when maybe that doesn't turn out to be the case, or maybe it's a lot more challenging to keep up with the pace and things like that. So yeah, proper expectations, it's everything with boot camps. And I think it's a super important thing for people to have that alignment.
Right. Right. No, it makes sense. And I try to preach this very often on this channel and generally in various places. What you put in is definitely what you get out. And I think you also touched on another point, which I try to emphasize a lot. The skill is learning to learn, because you're right. You can't stay in a boot camp for 12 months. You're eventually going to be, on your own, whatever that means, whether in a professional environment, whether, going through Stack Overflow. But, learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable is so important. And the sooner that people grasp it and at least start down that path, the easier, quote unquote, it becomes to operate kind of in that mindset. And the last thing being, right, when you do, especially with something being in person, when you do relocate, you mentioned Utah in your case. Yeah, I mean, you should definitely go and like leverage the instructors, and you can also relax to a degree, but you are there to do a particular thing. And I think what it really comes down to is what you put in is what you get out. And it's so true for so many things. And it's like pretty cliche, but it's very, very accurate. And the golden ticket mindset, where I sign up for this thing, I go to the courses, the classes, the workshops, I maybe like build an app or two, and then out of the gate I get a job right away and I know what I'm doing. I think it's not a golden ticket. There probably are some cases, some outliers where something like that maybe did happen. And I also think, while we're on the topic of it, I do want to also say that I have seen, some boot camps do misrepresent that as well too, which is unfortunate. Yeah. Not all of them, but from a marketing perspective, it is in their interest to lend themselves to be seen in that light. But the reality is it's not that easy, especially nowadays where the demand and the competition is absurdly higher than it was even like 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it totally makes sense. So what I'm hearing, or let me pose this as a question: Do you think boot camps are generally worth it? What I'm hearing from you is there was a pretty positive experience. You've broken into the industry, you've landed a job at CVS, pretty large company, Fortune 10, I want to say, but it sounds like it's gone over pretty well. So what is your general advice for whether or not a boot camp is worth it? Is it for everybody? Is it selective? Is it what would you say to the general audience, maybe looking for boot camps for web dev, or now there's like cloud computing, right? There's this whole range of different kinds of boot camps.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's kind of funny because most people who are going to boot camps want to land a job in that industry. And so it's almost like this binary thing of like, well, did you land a job or did you not? And usually your answer to that would like dictates whether you think it's worth it or not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like you said, I've kind of, made it as like that career transition and things like that. And I attribute some portion of that to the boot camp. And so because logistically I was able to do it, and because I got a kind of a rapid environment of learning and kind of full immersion in that. Yeah, I would say it was absolutely worth it in my case. Whereas there were people, in my cohort with the same experience, it cost the same for them. They were in the same room as me, where, maybe it wasn't worth, they would say it wasn't worth it to them. So, same program, all that's different is where we're coming from, our expectations going into it, and kind of our willingness to kind of carry on after the boot camp with that. So yeah, it's highly down to the person. And that's why I totally recommend not rushing it and kind of being methodical about which, if it's right for you to do it, if you're actually cut out for software development as a career, if you've like even tried it beforehand versus just people signing up cold and things like that. So yeah, I think those kind of principles and suggestions apply to all boot camps. But what I think it's really cool is that you don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year university to kind of make it or to break into a certain field. And so there's a reason why there's so many boot camps. It's because they can be effective for the right person. Right. So yeah, but like I said, I don't want to sit here and say that it's right for everyone, or even that it's the only path, because it's absolutely not even necessary to do a boot camp. There's so many cases of people breaking in and kind of doing it all on their own, and I think that's amazing, and like really really commendable. Just for my situation, that seemed like a much tougher, longer road for me. Yep. So I kind of wanted to leverage what a bootcamp had to offer. But yeah, I would just say, be fully informed, try and connect with people who have gone to a program that you're interested in.
Being informed is so critical. Do your due diligence. I think this applies to a lot of things, not just boot camps. And then, I think you tossed out some pretty practical ways to do that. Reach out to alumni, instructors. Chances are, right, if it's reputable, it's been around for a while, and people are willing to, share their thoughts and answer questions, that, gets rid of the shadiness factor of what am I going to learn after I, spend $10, $15, $20,000, is, not a small amount of money for, the vast majority. So yeah, I mean, it definitely depends. I think you touched on all the right pieces, and also having measures in place to, support yourself, whether that's financially, a place to live, spouse, kids, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of times people don't set realistic goals. And I think also with setting realistic goals, you should also always think about a buffer, because if things don't go according to plan, which more often than not, they don't. Yeah. It's really important to have that buffer, for the sake of, your well-being, but also for the sake of, not getting demotivated and not hurting your morale after you spent so many hours learning this thing, so much money, right? Possibly relocating. It's exhausting. It takes a toll on you. And then to find out that, hey, look, I set aside 6 months, it didn't happen. And then maybe stopping where, you might have landed your first job in the 7th month. It's not a good path to go down. And being proactive about situational changes like that from the get-go probably will serve you a lot better in the long run. So cool. Okay. So one last thing that I'm curious on myself, so feel free to plug. You mentioned portfolio, definitely extremely important. You want to plug your 2 apps? I'm curious to know what your 2 apps are, if you have more than that. And I'll drop a link to your channel, of course, down below as well. And everyone who's been watching, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let's hear Dave pitch and plug his apps.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because the primary goal of these was just to, again, build up a portfolio to kind of express to employers. But the two most latest apps that I've done when I was job searching, one is called Haptic Haven. So I actually did a video about like how the whole process of like thinking of the idea and putting that together on my channel, but it's essentially a developer utility tool to help you test out and compare different haptic feedback to put into your application. So I was having a hard time kind of feeling the different styles that are built into Swift. And so kind of it started as a personal little tool for me, and then just decided, hey, if I've already built a little bit of this, how about I just like throw a fresh sheet of paint on this,
Right.
add a few settings or whatever, and then publish it out to the App Store. And then bam, now I have another app and more legit and all that. So yeah, that one's been fun. And actually, has been doing okay on the App Store, which is,
Awesome.
wasn't, again, my primary purpose of doing that, but it's
Crushing it.
just fun when you have some users and some download numbers behind that. And then the other was a kind of like a finance related app. I've always just been fascinated with market capitalization of different companies. And if you remember, like when Apple first hit $1 trillion as like the first US company to do that, and then 2 trillion. And so I wanted to build out a way to compare visually market capitalization of different companies. So the app, it's called Market Cap. And it just kind of has animated graphs where you can look at different industries and visualize, like Microsoft compared to Apple and things like that. So that was a fun one as well. And again, wanted to do one that was consuming an API to show to an employer, like, hey, I can do this and things like that. So yeah, and they're all open source. So on my GitHub, you can kind of get in there and check out how they were built, which is another fun thing.
Oh, it's awesome. Very cool. And yeah, I mean, publishing something is one thing, but then also have it do well is, I don't know about you, but it has its own feeling of it in its own right, where people are downloading it, people are using it, and it just feels good to put something out there and get that validation. And then, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, like calling an API and visualizing some stuff. That's pretty cool too. I think it's a pretty translatable skill to, the professional day job scene when you're applying for roles and whatnot. So that's awesome. And I didn't realize they were open source. So I'm gonna go take a look at them right after this. So that's super cool.
Yeah, you can
I'll link
roast
that.
my code.
I'll link it down below. That's very cool. Also a testament to portfolio and people. If someone who you interviewed with really wants to go and dig in there, let's say an engineer that you interviewed with, they have it at their disposal. So if they are hesitant about like, all right, does Dave really know what he's doing? They can go and take a look at like what you've got going on there. So that is very cool.
That was intentional for that exact reason of just like, hey, if you want to take a look,
that's exactly what I would do.
And it also, it makes me cut less corners too when I'm actually coding, if it's actually going to be available for somebody else to take a look at, which I think is a good practice.
Yeah, no, definitely. The number of times where like before pushing code up, I look at it, I'm like, do I really want to push this? I don't think it's in a good enough state where I should push this. Should probably name things a little better.
Right.
That's so funny. But okay, this has been great. So I think just to recap, boot camps, they're definitely worked out well for you, highly subjective and situational. I also think it doesn't come down to just the boot camp. It comes down to the preparation and due diligence of the person looking to, go down the road of a boot camp. But a lot of good insights. It's not a golden ticket by any means. A lot of effort, hard work, and dedication, portfolio projects, etc. you need to put in before, throughout, and afterwards. And it sounds like when you stick to that and you're consistent, you do end up getting to wherever you're trying to go. So this has been great. So this has been great. I just plagiarized everything you just said over the past 20 minutes, but this has been great. I'm gonna drop a link to your channel down below. You're also a fellow YouTuber. We might have a video coming up over on your channel where we talk about some more Swift iOS related stuff. So everyone who's watching, be on the lookout for that. Go and subscribe to Dave, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. You guys know the spiel that I do every video. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I'll catch you on the next one.